Hi, I'm Gary Lee Price, sculptor, and this is my lovely wife.
Leesa Clark-Price, non-sculptor.
And we are really happy to be here. This is a great day.
Gary's mantra of lifting the human spirit through sculpture was birthed a long time ago. In fact, I believe it was birthed when Gary was a little 6-year-old boy living in Germany, when he experienced the murder-suicide of his mom and stepfather. Right after that horrific experience, Gary was shipped to the United States, where he endured the next 7 years of massive abuse of every kind you can imagine. Through that experience, Gary learned that his art ability was the one thing that brought joy and happiness to his heart. I love the story he tells of going to first grade just a few days after coming back to the States, and his teacher, Mrs. Anderson, held up his first drawing that he did in his classroom and held it up in front of all the kids in the class and said, "Look what Gary Price has done." You can just feel your heart swell with joy and happiness for this little boy with this horrific story, as all of his classmates oohed and awed, and little Gary's heart was filled with, "Oh, I can do something that makes the pain go away." And I believe Gary has spent his 40-now-year career creating ways to take the pain away for all of us. And his sculpture truly does lift the human spirit.
It was such a wonderful thing looking back and realizing that not only had my mom given me some skills and some tools to work through that horrific event, but then to have Mrs. Anderson do exactly that. She was briefed on what had happened to me in Germany and that. And here I am in first grade and I have all these memories and all these vivid pictures in my mind. And all of a sudden I'm getting my mind shifted to something positive through Mrs. Anderson. And I even believe that's one of the main reasons why I'm a sculptor and an artist today. It's because of that, those affirmations that happened. Mrs. Anderson gave me an all pretty right.
I am grateful for the parents that I had, because I believe that I am who I am because I had such amazing parents. To this day, I still refer to myself as Princess. And I believe that that's because my father really honestly instilled that in me. But I didn't have a really easy journey either. And I think Gary and I have a few things in common that have brought us to where we are, which I also don't believe it's an accident. I believe we're together for a higher purpose. So when I was 26 years old with 4 little tiny babies, I was widowed through suicide. And that journey brought me to an awareness that pretty quickly I got to find out whether or not people were my friends, number one, and that my success in life really depended on me. I sometimes joke around right now and say, hey, if I had to pick one person to be on my team, who would I pick? And I always say I would pick me because I trust me. I feel like life has prepared me for some pretty incredible journeys and create these fun little masks that have kind of gone viral right now for me. And it just turned into a situation where we had to wear a mask in Arizona, where we live everywhere we went. And I found myself on the few times I ventured out forgetting to take my mask or leaving it in my car, getting all the way to the door going, oh man, where is it? And I just thought, man, I really wish I could just have it right here around my neck and not have it look like a mask. And so because I've always worn bandanas, I just created this fun little design. And so, there it is. So I wasn't quite sure I was going to show that today, but you get to see that anyway. It's turned into an opportunity for me to give back, which is what I'm all about. So Uniques by Leesa 30 years later is a charity donation that goes to support the homeless in Arizona, and a friend of ours right now who's donating a kidney to a complete stranger. So that's a little bit of who I am, and I think my second pathway, if you will, with my life has been to support my husband. And I take great pride in that. And I believe that part of what we're about is creating this. And it does make me emotional every time I talk about it. But I think it is a part of what's happening in the world today and a part of us being a part of the great human connection. And why I said yes to that and to the project was just that I believe our entire lives have been about the great human connection. And if we can be a part of that, and if we can influence something positive that way, we're in.
Yeah.
You know, to me, being a people person means that I get to spend a lot of time with a lot of different people. And the number one way that I do that is through my retreats that I get to facilitate at our beautiful property in Arizona. So this guy created an opportunity for me to have a beautiful big teepee in our backyard. I have about 16 women who come into our property and spend a long weekend with us, probably about every month, but COVID of course put that on hold. So right now I've got a bunch of women that are really excited for that to be over and join us there. Gary plays a big part in that his studio is also on our property, and he facilitates a lot of the art side and the clay creation, manifestation, meditation, big name, that he does all over the world. But we do offer that as part of the retreat for the women. And we've seen miracles as people create something with clay and then go forward and create it in their lives. Okay, so, you know, COVID created a unique opportunity and challenge for me with my teepee nights and my retreats because we were no longer able to get together physically. It also created a lot of anxiety for the women who were used to getting together pretty regularly. I took that problem out to Gary's studio, and I know it's always kind of a challenge to go into his sacred space where he's so happy and doing his thing and say, hey, sweetheart, I have this idea. Anyway, you would join me and we could do some co-ed, bring in some of everybody for some virtual teepee nights during COVID from the teepee. And he was a sport, he said yes. So we got to do 10 weeks of virtual teepee night in the teepee with a different subject each week. And we invited different guests to come on as guest speakers, and we had some really amazing, fun virtual teepee nights.
Yeah, I think it's been fascinating. These beautiful women were so used to being with Leesa, and one thing that she does, she says, what's said in the teepee stays in the teepee.
Adamantly.
And it's a sacred, safe place for them to be and to, talk about this stuff that they're having challenges with and that. And they've done so well with that. But all of a sudden when COVID hits and you can't do that, my goodness, they're missing, that relationships cannot be together in that. And so you did the Zoom.
I think one of the biggest challenges of COVID was an accident that happened about halfway through April. In fact, it was on our one son's birthday on the 17th of April. Our daughter came down to our house, and she's about 34 years old, and she's an avid outdoors woman. Loves riding motorcycles and bicycles and has a fabulous mountain bike. And as they pulled into our home, they mentioned that they'd forgotten their helmets, which they never, ever go without their helmets.
Right.
But that afternoon, they decided to check out the bicycle and popped it out just in our driveway right there. We weren't even really going to go biking or anything. And Gary, I believe you were riding right with her. Why don't you describe what it looked like?
Yeah, and it was just a real brief little thing, and she was on her mountain bike, and she's feeling good in that, and so she starts pulling up the front end a little bit, and she's going right in front of our house, and I'm coming this way, and all of a sudden when she went down, the tire was a little sideways, and it knocked her down so quick, and I'm like 30 feet away, and I see her head hit the pavement, bounce up, and hit back down, and she instantly got herself up, and then she just went back and was out. And I was like, oh my gosh, did that just really happen right in front of my eyes?
And that's where the real horror of what was going on with COVID comes in.
Yeah.
we had to take her to the hospital, and we called 911, and they said, do you think there's a brain injury? And of course her face was numb and she was a little unconscious in and out and not clear where she was and what had happened or even what her name was. So we knew that we needed to go to the brain trauma center, which was a little farther away, and we didn't have time for an ambulance. And so we loaded her in the car with her husband and headed to the hospital, completely forgetting about COVID because we really hadn't left our home for several months, and realized the roads were kind of empty, and we got there fairly quickly, only to see that the hospital, all the main entrances were barricaded. The only way to get in was through the emergency room, and there was one helicopter already unloading, another one coming in, and 3 ambulances on the curb unloading people into the hospital, and we had to kind of stand there and wait at the door to the emergency room with an officer who then told us that we couldn't go in with her. And I was traumatized. How do I let my daughter go in when she doesn't even know who she is or what happened to her? And we tried to explain that. They finally told her husband he could go for a couple of minutes with her just to check her in. And that was it. And they kicked him out. He sat on the sidewalk outside of the hospital for most of the day and evening until they told him he had to leave. And we didn't hear one word from the hospital for 2 days. Not one phone call, nothing. And I don't think I've ever been that frightened in my entire life, wondering what was going on, where is she? It wasn't until after we discovered that they were this close to doing brain surgery without us even knowing.
Yeah.
But, you know, even here we are now, 4 months later, and she still struggles. It was a very serious brain injury. She had a brain bleed. They released her and she came back here to Utah and is now seeing a couple different doctors a couple times a week.
Right. Yeah, you know, it's fascinating, this helmet thing. I ride my bicycle every day out on the road, Indian School Road and different ones. And I go, 10, 20 miles a day and just love it. And normally had never worn a helmet. I wear one when I'm riding a motorcycle, but on a bicycle, I'm like, no, I want to feel that free,
It's a cruiser.
wind blowing, and it's a cruiser and all that stuff. One of our neighbors said, Carrie, we hate to see you every day riding without a helmet. They said, we had 2 friends that got taken out, and it wasn't their fault. It was a total accident. Had they had their helmets on, they'd probably still be alive. So they talked me into I got me a couple of really cool helmets. They're bright fluorescent yellow, and just cool. A lot of times I get asked, what's your favorite piece? What's something that just every time that you see it, you go, okay, that piece really works for you. And I keep going back to a piece that I did several years ago, and I entitled it Synergy, because one of my foundational beliefs is that we're not here to be alone. Somehow we're a unit. We're here to interact with people. Yes, we need our alone time. We need that private time to figure things out and get in that creative zone. But then it's family time. It's interaction. It's community. And so I created a piece a few years ago to get that idea across. But this is about community. This is about unity. This is about people coming together in a united, beautiful way, not just to work and all that stuff, but to play and enjoy life and that. And I kind of think that it happens best when we interact with each other, right?
Right.
There's a time and a place for everything. But to me, this is, and then it also ended up being a cool design. It's kind of round-like. I always say that this piece wouldn't work if one of the arms was missing. It takes all of the spokes in the wheel to have this continuum of motion and fluidity.
I love that you named it Synergy.
Yeah.
Also, every now and then something comes across our desk and it catches my heart, and I usually end up taking it to Gary and saying, this caught my heart, and I want you to look at it, and what do you think? That's how the Great Human Connection came to us. We knew Matt from long ago, and he reached out and said, hey, doing this project, and I think it gets to be about COVID and how everything's changed, and about responsibility, and I need people to write chapters, and would you guys be willing to participate under the subject of responsibility? And how do two people who their entire lives are really focused on responsibility say no to that? And especially, it was a no-brainer. It was kind of like, especially where it's about connection, right? Because a big part of what Gary does is about connection, right?
Yeah, human relationships and how we can assist each other and help each other and all that.
So we said yes because we think that the Statue of Responsibility is also going to be a global movement, not just a monument, but a movement. And that it's important that we all connect and that humanity comes together, especially right now during these very challenging times, that we're able to find platforms that speak to that. And we're proud to be a part of this project.
Very proud.